Hello and welcome to the Bible study on the book of Romans. Yesterday, we left off with Paul speaking to the Jews in the church at Rome about Israel, and that is because of their disobedience and obstinance that the Gentiles were used by God to make them jealous and angry. And I didn't say it in yesterday's lessons, but in essence, he's saying to them, stop being in conflict because it is God who brought them into his people and that they are in fact his people as well. And so today we're going to look at one of the chapters I've really been anticipating, and that's Romans chapter 11. Let's start in Romans 11 verses 1 through 6. I say then, God has not rejected his people, has he? May it never be. For I too am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin. God has not rejected his people whom he foreknew. Or do you not know what the scripture says in the passage about Elijah? How he pleaded with God against Israel. Lord, they have killed your prophets, they have torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and they are seeking my life. But what is the divine response to him? I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed their knee to Baal. In the same way, then, there has also come to be, at the present time, a remnant according to God's gracious choice. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. You will find in this section of the letter that Paul addresses both the Jewish believer and the Gentile believer. This part is for both Jew and Gentile, but for different reasons. Despite the fact that Gentiles are considered to be a part of Israel, clearly even today, there are many Jews who have as yet rejected God. But Paul points out to them, the Jewish believers, that they are part of the remnant at the present time, but that it's by God's grace they were ones who hadn't been hardened by God. But God has not rejected those who still refuse to believe. And the term foreknew is said to be what was spoken in Jeremiah 18, verses 8 through 10. It says, if the nation against which I have spoken turns from its evil, I will relent concerning the calamity I plan to bring on it. Or at another moment, I might speak concerning a nation or concerning a kingdom to build up to or to plant it, if it does evil in my sight by not obeying my voice. Then I will think better of the good of which I had promised to bless it. You see, acceptance and rejection are both divine sovereignty and human choice or free will. Let's continue in verse 7 through 11. What then? What Israel is seeking, it has not obtained, but those who were chosen obtained it, and the rest were hardened. Just as it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes to see not and ears to hear not, down to this very day. And David said, let their table become a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a retribution to them. Let their eyes be darkened to see not and bend their backs forever. I say then, they did not stumble as to fall, did they? May it never be. But by their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make them jealous. We come from a society of trophies for participation, and because we must be fair, and that completely distorts our ability to see God for who God is, because we judge him and his actions by human reasoning. And so the hardening of Israel was actually God's good. But that also means we have to think and ponder about the time that's passed, because of all the Jews since that time that have been hardened and have died. And knowing that because Christ came changing the covenants, and despite being God's beloved, they're going to end up in hell for rejecting him. God hardened those who continued in their unbelief, but because God did, that's how we as Gentiles came to be grafted in. It was for a purpose, to make them jealous to the point of turning back to him. I'm going to end the first lesson here. Please join me as we pick it back up starting in verses 12 through 15. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next one.